This episode and every episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show is brought to you by Ironmonger Brewing. Visit Ironmonger at their taproom in Marietta, Georgia, or online at ironmongerbrewing.com.
Open up a tab, grab a seat, and pour a pint. It's time for the Beer Guys Radio Show.
You want free beer? Go to the brewery.
Dedicated to the art, science, and enjoyment of craft beer.
Yo, what's wrong with the beer we got?
Now, here are your hosts, Tim Dennis and Brian Hewitt.
And welcome to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio Studios in Marietta, Georgia. And this week we're talking with Lost Abbey, Port Brewing, Hop Concept, and Tiny Bubbles. It's quite a show, Brian.
It's a lot.
It's going to be a lot going on there. I am Tim Dennis, and with me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Brian Hewitt.
Hey, Tim. So joining us today, we have the one and only Tomme Arthur, the co-founder and chief operating owner. Did I get that right?
That's it.
I think that's right. Of Port Brewing and the Lost Abbey and Tiny Bubbles and the Hop Concept.
Yes,
trying to remember all those. We're going to talk about the state of the industry, brewing whales, Tiny Bubbles, of course, and a lot more. Tomme, thanks for joining us.
Hey, guys. First time, long time. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. We have just got into, so we actually pregame with your Tiny Bubbles. This is a new project for you, right? Newer?
Yeah, we've been making sour beer for almost 15 years in San Marcos, and everybody's been saying we need to be in the can game. So really wanted to get Tiny Bubbles brought to the market and wanted to do something a little bit different. So it's not a quick sour in the sense that it's a kettle and 2 weeks out the door. It's a live probiotic beer, but something we're really proud of.
It's tasty, and that's, the brute style, especially in the IPA, seem to be a kind of a flash. A lot of people did them, and you don't hear much about them. But I like that, the character.
The dry,
I enjoy
effervescent,
that.
yeah.
So a question for you. Are you trying to appeal to the folks that are digging into seltzers? I see the thin cans and that. Is that supposed to be an alternative for beer drinkers?
Yeah, we're definitely living in the probiotic and healthy, beneficial space. The 12-ounce slim can, we've got about 120, 130 calories. It's good for your gut. It's low residual sugar. We're not stupid. The market's moving in a better for you sort of movement. And the goal with Tiny Bubbles is to sort of be on the fringe. It's not seltzer. It's not made from corn syrup and things like that. But, we're hoping that people who want something a little bit lighter and more approachable might understand what this is.
Brian and I have been real big on the probiotic stuff. Our quarantine hobby has been fermenting foods. So we've got sauerkrauts and kimchis and pickles and all of this stuff.
I had no idea. I love sauerkraut as much as I do. Now I can't live without it.
So give me all the probiotics. I'm ready for it. Absolutely.
That's brilliant, though. I thought it was like a play on the seltzer thing, but I didn't even think about the probiotic thing. So it's kombucha and seltzer in one. You don't need those other two. You got Tiny Bubbles.
The thing is it's definitely gluten, right? There's a lot of wheat in it, so it's not gluten free. But we've got a different project we're working on for that as well.
Okay.
So there'll be a fifth brewery.
Cool, all kinds of good stuff happening, man. That's awesome.
We're having fun with it. The world of beer has changed a lot. I've been doing this for 25 years, and when we got into it, it was all about we're 4 ingredients and we're pure and we're not the big guys, and we've seen a lot of movements and shifts and things, and I think it's just fair to look at the edges and say, what does the consumer want right now, and we're trying not to live in high glycemic land, and we're definitely not pastry guys, and we're not overly hazy guys either. So there's room for us, but we gotta stay in our lane.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we're enjoying, the resurgence of the lager, nice pilsners and stuff like that. We've got a few breweries here in Georgia now that really, capitalize on that. And it's nice to go have a beer that's not 15% barrel aged in that. Not that those aren't delicious, but you don't necessarily want to sit on the patio in summer.
Doesn't hit you like a brick.
Yeah, I'll give you some breaking news. We actually canned a Czech Pilsner last week under the Lost Abbey brand for the first time. It hasn't even been labeled or released yet, but
how about that?
We have a Lost Abbey can for the first time in 14 years.
Wow. There you go. How about that, man?
Tasting room only, but there's you heard it here. Look,
that's very cool.
It'll be on Instagram soon enough, but yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, Brian, pretty good week. We did some drinking this weekend. We got out, had some patio weather.
We did, yes.
And enjoyed it. So we went by Atlanta Brewing Company, one of our favorite digs over there. We sampled a few of the beers that they had on, and they do a nice mix of sours and milkshakes and pilsners and IPA. Yes. So had a good time there, and I think you got out a little bit over Labor Day, right? And popped in your little neighborhood brewery, right?
I got a little stir crazy, so I went over to Contrast Artisan and tried out their Hit the Gap IPA, which was quite nice, and their Brighter Side of Tomorrow Sour, which was a lemon, grapefruit, and ginger sour. Really good, really enjoyable. Had a lot of fun. It was perfect weather, great. I wouldn't have imagined a parking lot would be as enjoyable to just sit in, but it's really nice there over in Chambly. So that was a good time. I did do a drink your cellar pick this week.
Okay.
I'm a little disappointed with it. I had a pre-sellout Wicked Weed El Paraiso Imperial Coffee Stout.
Oh, yes.
Had thought it was going to do well. I expected it to, because a lot of their stouts did not do well. 2016, not a great year for that, unfortunately.
I think I recall not caring much for that one. Like, the coffee was sour, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was
okay.
It
even
may be
fresh then. So.
Maybe even fresh. That was the case, and I just didn't remember that. But I've had good results with some of their older beers. That one just didn't live up to it. So unfortunately, bad news on that one.
Well, it happens, man. It happens. Now, we've had some fun here. Actually, in the studio tonight, we had a potato chip flight.
We did,
Brian. So we've got a bevy of Asian potato chips. These are all Asian, correct? Chinese, Japanese, Thai?
Chinese, Japanese. I think maybe Japanese. I'm not great at deciphering the characters, but a variety of stuff. The numb and spicy hot pot flavor I went looking for specifically, and then I saw a cornucopia over there, seaweed and cucumber and crayfish, and I'm like, well, I got to get them all now.
Now, Tommy, when you go for a bag of chips, do you normally reach for cucumber or spicy crayfish or the squid?
I mean, I got sick on squid ink a long time ago, so I'm more of a caviar kind of,
The caviar chip. Yeah. Did you get any caviar chips, Brian?
I didn't see any caviar.
Maybe next time then, right?
Yeah. Well, Tim, let's talk about the beers of the week.
Crack open a cold one. It's the Truck and Tap Beer of the Week. Woo-hoo! Craft beer and food trucks in downtown Woodstock. Truckandtap.com.
Well, Brian, as always, we have just a phenomenal selection of beers here. Thank you, Tommy, for sending us some brews. We're enjoying your Veritas Key Lime right now, which I was really excited to get because I saw it on the website and really wanted to try it, and it's phenomenal. It's just a really great beer. As I mentioned, we did the pre-gaming with the Tiny Bubbles. We had the Orange Guava Brut Ale and the Original Brut, which is with sea salt and Brettanomyces, which those are both really tasty. We have Hop Concept IPA. We have Port Brewing Hop 15 DIPA. And from Lost Abbey, we have the Judgment Day, which is an Abbey quad with raisins. The Number of the Beast, BBA, with raisins, cinnamon, and chilies. The Red Poppy, which is barrel-aged ale with cherry and poppy seeds. And I was sent an email, Tommy, with a warning that that's heavy on the Brett, so make sure it's nice and cool before we open it up. So.
Yeah, my bottle didn't gush, but the one we opened that wasn't super cold was a little bit of a gusher. So
okay, ours is nice and cool, so we should be good.
Keep it away from your computer, you'll be fine.
Okay, good deal. And we have My Black Parade, which is a bourbon barrel-aged spiced ale, and rounding out with Lost Abbey Ex Cathedra, which is a BBA quad with ginger and orange. And we're going to have to work really hard to finish all those in an hour.
I was going to say, that's a lot of beer.
Yeah, exactly.
At least you pre-gamed well.
We did, man. We did.
I believe in us.
So, Brian, what's happening this week in the news?
What's in the news? The beer guys have the scoop.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
Time for headlines.
All right, so some drama that we didn't have a chance to get to last week. Surly Brewing is closing their beer hall after employees announced their intent to unionize. And the announcement of the closure came just days after the unionization announcement. So according to Surly, the beer hall closure had been in the works for weeks at this point, and the timing was, quote, not ideal. They say the real reason for the closure is that revenue is down 82% compared to the same time last year, and they are forecasting losing $750,000 if they continue operations into the winter. The spokesperson for the union is saying something else you might expect, that it's a clearly illegal and disgusting act, and they also note that many employees found out they would not be having a job anymore via social media, and they don't have bumping rights, and all that came together. So the beer hall will close November 2nd.
I kind of think that that's going to be something that's going to be pretty clear to figure out whether or not it was in the works.
Yeah.
I mean, they're talking about the money that they were losing. If this had been in the works before they talked about unionizing, there has to be some communication that says so.
Somewhere.
So it's
some email.
I think it's going to be easy to prove one way or the other whether or not this was in the works before they were doing some union busting there.
It definitely looks bad, and I'll guarantee you they accelerated the pace at the very least as a result of the unionization announcement. Yeah. I'm guessing.
Who knows, man? Who knows?
That's my speculation.
Yeah, I mean, if it's in the plans, might as well, and save them the time too. They don't have to mess with going through the union stuff if they're like, hey, we're closing anyhow. So. We are listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a break, but we'll be back very soon with more from Tomme Arthur. Brian and Tim, the Beer Guys. If you're like us, no lunch or dinner is complete without a pint or two of craft beer.
Which is why Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth are always on our list. Tim, why do they call it Truck and Tap?
Well, the tap part is easy, Brian. They've got 18 of them.
As for the truck part, that's where it gets interesting. Truck and Tap features your favorite Atlanta area food trucks, so you're getting a different menu every day.
Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth.
Truckandtap.com. Let them know that the Beer Guys sent you.
You know we love good beer, and Athletic Brewing makes non-alcoholic beer that stands shoulder to shoulder with their boozy brethren. With a fraction of the calories and certified organic, it's a great beer to enjoy anytime.
Athletic's got new brews like Cerveza Atletica just in time for summer. Check out the full selection at athleticbrewing.com. Use code BG25 for 25% off your first order, and U.S. customers get free nationwide shipping. Athletic Brewing, brew without compromise.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
I didn't enjoy it at all.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Remember, all episodes are available on demand, so if you missed the broadcast, get the podcast. Beer Guys Radio is available on all popular and unpopular podcasting apps. Now let's get back to Tomme Arthur with Port Brewing and the Lost Abbey and so much more.
And other things, too.
I don't think I can read them off every single time.
Fine.
Yeah,
we'll allow it. So now, Tomme, so you started brewing in 1996, and you were an English major in college. So how does an English major make the jump into the world of brewing?
So I was lucky enough to graduate high school and then head off to college in the fall of 1991. And when I got to college, a friend of mine and his dad said they wanted to take me on a beer journey, and I spent the next 4 years of my life drinking and sampling every beer I could get my hands on. By the time I graduated in June of 1995, I had really fallen in love with beer and kind of wanted to find my way in that world.
Easy enough story there, right?
Yeah, seriously.
I want to do that, absolutely.
I have heard that you think or have espoused that beers should have a story or historically have a story. So being an English major, has that made it easier for you to establish the stories behind your beers?
Yeah, and I think that for us, when we launched the Lost Abbey brand specifically, we said that there was always three stories on the bottle. There was the front panel, which was the really highly imaginative artwork. The back narrative, which was the sort of the backstory behind the beer itself, and some of the artwork. And at the same time, then we always said that the beer itself inside the bottle, the liquid, was something that was very, very important to the story.
Three-part story.
Yeah,
Working in harmony. Three-part harmony, right?
Three-part harmony.
Yeah.
And that's really how we viewed each beer was its own unique story, but it was a cohesive story based upon the front artwork, the back panel, and then sort of how the beer tasted.
Well, being the Lost Abbey, probably the Holy Trinity would be a little more appropriate.
Yeah, except the guys at Avery had already started using the Holy Trinity, so we were, and they're great friends, and we were okay with it. So
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So what kind of beers were you brewing back in 1996? A little nostalgia for me because I was drinking some beers back then.
So my first brew pub job was at Cervecerías La Cruda in downtown San Diego, and that was a very strong sense of let's reimagine some British styles. So we had an amber and a pale ale and a porter and things like that. Very conventional by today's standards. But I was homebrewing at the time, and the head brewer, Troy, and I were kind of working on the sides. For us, White Labs had just opened up in San Diego, and they were very keen on testing yeasts and things out. So a lot of my spare time at Cervecerías La Cruda was kind of spent on, we were brewing Belgian Wit, Belgian Abbey, Double, stuff like that.
So I remember in that, Brian, you and I talk about all the time, the 90s brew pub.
Yes.
You had your amber ale. There was probably a Hefeweizen.
An ESB, which you don't see hardly any.
Yeah.
Well, we had one of those, yeah.
Yeah, so it's good. And I think the areas that I was in, I've been down in the South during that time period. And really, I think we've stayed behind for quite a while. Georgia, we're just catching up. Now, you were in Oregon.
That's
so
right.
You were in the hot spot there.
I was kind of cutting my teeth on Bridgeport beers back in the day. They had the porter, they had the amber, they had the ESB, they had a pale ale and an IPA. Those were kind of their flagships. You went in there, and I would introduce friends to beer by getting them the flight. And then I was very much into the ESBs back then. I didn't realize I was a beer hipster at the time. I just liked that beer.
Just enjoyed
yeah.
it. Well, I was in my mid-20s before I realized that like Heineken and Moosehead weren't craft beers. That was, where I lived, those were the premium things. When you got into those, you were just you were fancy. You were too fancy if you were sipping.
I was, yeah.
Sipping Heinekens
yeah.
there.
If you're
Absolutely.
sipping, yeah.
Now, Tommy, you mentioned White Labs. What did you do there with White Labs?
So after Cervecerías La Cruda closed, I spent a few months working at White Labs, sort of in product development and lightly sales. I would go around and visit breweries and just sort of, showcase the yeast that they were producing and ask them if they had used them or if they had questions and things like that. More relationship based than anything. And my job was just to kind of be out there talking to people about whether they knew what White Labs was and what White Labs did differently than other suppliers.
It seems like the last few years there's really been a surge in craft yeast. We've seen it.
Sure,
We've seen
yeah.
all these smaller labs popping up offering different stuff. Because back when we were homebrewing, Brian, because we haven't homebrewed at our home brewery in probably 3 years now.
Oh,
right?
probably, yeah.
But you were White Labs and Y yeast, and like the Safel and that
Yep.
were the ones, and they started getting a few others coming out. So, Tommy, there where you're brewed, do you get into many of the new kid yeast and that, or you stick with a lot of the classics?
No, we definitely haven't hit a lot of the Vike stuff yet, and we're playing around with the live lactic things, and that's probably the most out on the edge that we are. But we're not in Conan land, we're not in Barbarian, and because we're just not doing those kinds of things right now. But you got to remember that we're a heavily with 4 brands currently, we're a heavily yeasted house to begin with. I suspect that at any given time there's 4 or 5 different yeasts rolling through the brewery, and that doesn't even take into account all the bacteria and microorganisms and things. So I think we've got enough on our plate as it is.
Yeah,
I was gonna say you have some spontaneous
right?
stuff going on too, right?
Yeah, we do have a little bit of spontaneous stuff. We call it Project X. We've never released a large batch. We've never done a full bottling of anything that was spontaneous. We did a little bit of draft stuff, but we do have a process for making spontaneous beer without a cool ship and have had a lot of success with it, but we've never released anything that's 100% spontaneous.
I was going to ask about that because I saw it mentioned in an interview you did that you had a process that, like you said, no cool ship involved. What is that process? What are you doing to cause that spontaneousness to happen?
I mean, essentially, we use our mash tun as a cool ship. So we do a pretty standard, conventional mashing boiling profile, and then we send it back into our mash tun and let it hang out there for as long as it needs to. It's something that was developed a long time ago in our world, and we've gotten better at the technique over time. But for us, the key is that when we do our spontaneous fermentations, we don't use any barrels that had previously held beer here at the brewery. So we always bring in, neutral oak from an outside source, so that we basically say that, whatever takes place in those barrels was caused by the production method and the racking to barrels. Now, the one thing that we can't control is whether the barrels come in and are Brett positive from a winery, but the likelihood of that is 5-10% versus an entire batch.
Now, are you kind of missing out on any kind of interesting character by going with unused or for beer purposes barrels like that?
I mean, I guess the question really boils down to does the consumer demand a cool ship based beer? And for the longest time, a lot of our blended sour beers we felt were very well constructed and didn't necessarily need to be spontaneously fermented to be held in high regard. So we didn't have this sense that the cool ship was the solution.
And let's face it, Brian, there's only a small percentage of us nerds who are going to dig into stuff about is it spontaneous? Is it a cool ship? Is it this and that? Most people just, do they enjoy the beer? Do they like the beer and that?
And Tommy can just kind of jingle all the awards he has in front of your face. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you,
just
through all the noise my awards are making. So,
I mean, we've definitely held to our guns, and that is that, spontaneous beer was created because that's how they needed to deal with wort cooling and all kinds of stuff. But at the same time, if our process is sound in the cellar and we can make beers that doesn't need to be spontaneously fermented, but can mimic a lot of those things, then that's us. That's okay.
And that's something, I do enjoy. And Tommy, we'll talk about this. I don't think we've got time in this segment, but wanted to talk to you about terroir in beer. And it's something that I don't think a lot of people, maybe until recently, have put much stake in. But like if you drink in America, Jester King, you can tell a Jester King beer. They have their character.
Yeah.
This is a Jester King. You drink a Cantillon, you drink a Dry Fontainen. These taste like you can taste that this is their beer.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like seeing that.
I think for sure we should talk about it on the flip side, but I do think we have a lot of house culture, and I think that's what's one of our signatures and hallmarks.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And I always wondered why it was so big, in the wine world and that, but we didn't pay attention to it. And we've talked to Stan Hieronymus a little bit about like terroir and hops and things like that. I'm interested to dig into it.
We spent a lot of time chasing 1,000 IBU beers, but Tim, there was
did.
no time for
terroir.
terroir when you're looking for 1,000 IBUs.
don't care about terroir.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take another break, but we'll be back very soon to talk terroir with Tomme Arthur.
Have you ever thought about owning your own brewery but don't know what it takes to get one built? We're Storytime Construction, and we build breweries. We're Georgia's most experienced and hands-on contractors when it comes to building new breweries and tap rooms, or expanding existing breweries. We offer full build-outs, remodeling, and additions, as well as consulting and construction management. Give us a call at 770-733-4343. Storytime Construction. We build breweries.
Craft beer forged with a reverence for tradition and new styles that start a revolution. Ironmonger Brewing. The brewers at Ironmonger Brewing pride themselves at being masters of barrel-aged, hoppy, and sour beers. They invite you to their tap room in Marietta, Georgia to taste and see. Also visit their barrel room for an intimate drinking experience with great live entertainment. Keep up to date on all things Ironmonger by liking them on Facebook. Ironmonger Brewing, establishing a new standard in craft beer.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Cannonball coming.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. I want to give a quick shout out to one of our great radio affiliates, WWDC HD2 104.7 FM and 101.1 FM in Washington, D.C. Catch Beer Guys Radio on Wonk FM every Saturday at 5 p.m. local time. Now let's get back to Tomme Arthur with Port Brewing and the Lost Abbey.
Tomme, as we teased before we went out of the last segment, we're going to talk terroir here, but we just opened one from Port here, Hop 15, and this seems like it's tasting a little more West Coast here than that hop concept. Can you tell us about this one?
This one goes back old school. This is an original recipe from when I was at Pizza Port in 2002. One of the very first double IPAs that was kind of brewed in San Diego. Beer won a silver medal at the Great American Beer Festival 2003, 2004. It's also gone on to win Alpha King twice. This is a sort of a beast of a beer in the San Diego scene.
Now, you have to forgive me, Tomme. I should have written this down so I could quote it properly, but talking about GABF awards, your breweries have actually won twice, and you, as brewer, have won Brewer of the Year a couple times at GABF. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we've been lucky. When I was at Pizza Port, we won in 2003, 2004 for Small Brew Pub. And then when we launched the brewery here in 2006, we earned Great American Beer Festival Small Brewery of the Year in 2007 and won the same award the next spring in March or April or May of 2008. So 4 times we've been the Small Brewery of the Year.
That's awesome.
That's incredible.
It's always fun. I was with the guys from Almanac right after they won an award out there, and the energy level of winning something like that is just so great. You're drinking beer, having a good time. You win a prestigious award. It's good stuff. I want to win. I want to be Brewer of the Year.
There
Brian.
you go, Tim. Does that change? Do you suddenly start getting an influx of interesting new people to the brewery? Or, I mean, what happens when you win that first time?
I think for me, because we were in Solana Beach at the brew pub at the time, it just sort of validated that what we were doing was really important. Although working for Pizza Port at that time, there was plenty of local interest in the beer already. But in a 3-year span from 2003 to 2005, we ended up winning 11 GABF medals in those 3 years and narrowly missing out in 2005, winning the award again. So, part of it was just, great beers, great picking, ability to know and how to read the competition. And I don't know, we've just been competitively successful for a long time.
Just do it.
That's
Ryan.
right.
Just do it.
Seriously.
Well, Tommy, as we mentioned, we want to talk to you some about terroir here, and we mentioned that we talked to Stan Hieronymus a little bit about terroir and hops, and I know that they've done some tests in Oregon. I think is it Michigan Chinook? I think they said that delivers a lot more pineapple notes than like Oregon grown or the the Yakima hops.
It's either Chinook or Cascade. I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah.
One of the C ones.
One of the C hops.
Yes.
But I remember not that long ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, asking brewers about terroir and just kind of got a shrug. No one really seemed to pay much attention to it. Are people paying more attention to that now, and should they?
Well, I think when there's 8,500 breweries in the United States, and you got to tell somebody why your beer tastes different than the one down the street, that's a quarter mile down the road, you need something, and it's worked for the wine world. There's 10,000 wineries in North America, so I mean they've always had terroir, right? They've always had low fogs and great afternoon sun and trellises and limestone and whatever. I mean they've wine has always been based on the earth, and that's what they've used to sell the differentiation. But beer has been always more of a commodity, right? It doesn't really matter. You can say you use the choicest barley, but if you use the choicest barley to make the blandest beer, does it matter?
That's
right.
Yes.
Yeah. The finest hops for the wateriest beer.
Nobody ever talks about using heirloom rice. Let's be honest.
Right. Yes. I think I saw something. I'm almost sure that I heard you say something, Tommy, along. You can't wait to talk about the 3 generations of dextrose farmers.
Oh, yeah, that was at my brewery.
Or something along those lines.
That's right. The terroir of the dextrose farmer.
The terroir of the seltzer farmer, right?
That's it, man. Absolutely. Is it something that deals with hops? We know in yeast that your yeast is going to get flavor depending on where it's from and that. But should breweries or can breweries pay more attention to it as far as like hops and malts go?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, okay, let's just take conventionally beer has been 4 ingredients, right? And you can say, okay, this is our water profile, and you have Munich lagers, and they have a soft water profile. And you could say we have English bitters from the Thames Valley, and they have a hard water profile. Cool, water can definitely have a profile, and that can be influential. And then you can say, I want to have a malt profile. Well, you can have floor malted, or you could have heirloom malts, and all kinds of things that go along those lines. So malt absolutely can have terroir. Hops these days, including all the stuff Stan's ever talked about, without fail. And then yeast is the one that doesn't necessarily have terroir because you can grow it in a lab. But in our situation, where if you have spontaneous or uniquely house culture yeast, relative to our sour beer program, then yes, yeast is probably the one that has the least amount of terroir if it's just a lager strain or just an ale strain. But it creates some of the most flavor impacts. The guys at White Labs, Chris White, loves to talk about yeast contributing over 5,000 different flavor potentials in beer. So all 4 ingredients have their ability to bring terroir to the table.
Sure. I'm picturing the brewers going to like Omaha each year for the dextrose selection.
Yeah.
Like going through the different batches of dextrose.
I mean, let's go to Iowa. Let's go see the Field of Dreams, right?
That's it, man.
That's right. Holding up sacks of sugar. It's like, ooh, this pink bag.
This is it.
Ooh, I really like this
stuff,
one.
It starts as corn, so you got to go through the whole process.
Oh, that's a good point.
Man.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Not just the end product. We're not skiing the bumps here, kids.
The fresh. This is it. We use the corn syrup.
Yeah.
So, I was thinking your particular blend, along with the temperature, especially with the cool ship or anybody who does that sort of thing, your particular blend of yeast and bacteria kind of almost is a stand-in for a terroir if you don't really have one, right? I mean, when you think about it, because
sure,
it doesn't source from a particular terroir because it comes from a lab, some of it, but some of it's like ambient bacteria as well. So you get a little hint of terroir in that, right?
Yeah, I mean, we in our sour beer program, we are very well known for having what amounts to be a pretty strong house flavor. And so maybe terroir is sort of the exchange for house flavor, but our beers typically in the sour program here have a white wine and a real stone fruit kind of quality about them. So even if we make a very blonde, non-fruited beer that's sour and acidified and spends 18 months in oak, it comes off as having white wine grape skins, peachy notes, and things like that, cling fruit. So I do believe that our house culture is something that you could in a blind tasting be looking for and potentially find.
See, and that's fun. I like being able to do that. Like we talked about, with
being
Jester King or
distinctive is
those.
good.
You taste this and you're like, the Jolly Pumpkin.
Sure.
is another one that I've noticed really well.
I mean, being distinctive is great. So, you know what? I think we have to talk about the state of the industry. And specifically, I watched a speech where you compared the craft beer industry to the rock and roll industry of the 70s and 80s. And I'm curious if the metaphor still holds up. What era of rock and roll is craft beer in right now?
I mean, that was last December, and I
believe so.
do frankly feel like we were absolutely headed for the hair metal phase, and we were in it because there was a lot less about substance and a lot more about, glitz and glam and just kind of hanging on and shock people and value and things like that. That was probably, maybe we're lucky that this pandemic hit because it might have changed things. I don't know if you guys saw all the behavior of the customer, behavior changing and going back to lagers and pale ales and things.
Sure.
But certainly the abnormality of the industry, I think, kind of had to go back to some of the roots because people just needed comfort and they weren't going to find comfort in oddity.
At some point, you get tired of applying all that Kiss makeup and you have to go on the road without it. I'm curious, are Pilsners the beer that's the equivalent of the grunge era of music?
And I don't think so. I do think that needs to be something to shock us out of it, but Pilsners are classical, right? They're really fine-tuned in their movement, and there's always been classical music and things. I think what we need is something that looks like beer, tastes like beer, and isn't wildly different, but has roots in what we've been doing, and we can point to it and say, "Cool, we're back to being brewers."
It'd be fun to see.
I was really hoping I was right on that. Pilsner
sorry, but
I'm sorry.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
That's
Brian.
right.
Absolutely. Yes. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take another break, but we'll be back very soon with more from Tomme Arthur. It's time to take your snack back with bold flavors that complement your latest brew. Southern Recipe Small Batch Pork Rinds will do just that with flavors like Korean Kimchi Barbecue, Honey Chipotle, Cilantro Lime, and more. Munch on these beer-friendly bacon bites right out of the bag or crush them in your favorite recipes as a substitute for breading. Find your next bag at Kroger or go to southernrecipesmallbatch.com for recipes and a buy two, get one coupon. That's southernrecipesmallbatch.com.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
To be the man, you gotta beat the man. Woo!
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to Beer Guys Radio Show. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beerguys. Patrons get cool perks like Beer Guys swag and commercial-free episodes. Now let's get back to Tomme Arthur with Port Brewing, the Lost Abbey, the Hop Concept, and Tiny Bubbles.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Tomme, we have just got, as we're going to the fourth segment, we wanted to go out with a bang. And we asked for your valuable advice, and you suggested we do the 1-2 punch here, where we have Judgment Day and Number of the Beast. And you said Judgment Day is the base for Number of the Beast. Is that correct?
That is true. And just for the record, Judgment Day is also the base for our cuvee, and at least one more or two more beers. It's a very versatile beer, so it finds its way into numerous things.
It's good. You know, these beers, everybody likes their hazy, milkshaky beers these days, Brian.
Right.
That's what the kids are into.
That's what those kids are into.
But man, I sure do love a good quad, a good Belgian beer in that. And Tomme, I'm sure you can relate to this. It was maybe 2-3 months ago, Brian and I were talking how we remember when Belgian beers were a big part of our beer diet because there just wasn't a ton of American beer, at least where we were. And so we had to revisit because I felt like I'd been neglecting a first love there for a while, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us, cut our teeth on imported beer, right? There wasn't a ton of American beer, and certainly not even locals. You had regionals and things, but, everything was import-based, at least when I got going at this. And I'm pretty excited. I just ran into this new group on Facebook, and they're called the Old Money Tickers, so the OMT guys. And I really love the OMT guys because they drink old dusty bottles, and I'm a big fan.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Old dusty bottles of cellar stuff that you've had sitting around for entirely too long.
It's all about,
Yeah.
what are you drinking and how long have you had it? It's great.
That's good times. I love that the Judgment Day goes into a lot of beers you make because there's a little bit of judgment in everything good that you pour
I've
there.
been called a judgmental so let's just get it out on the table.
There you go.
Just gotta make the note there.
Yeah.
It happens. Kind things said, unkind things
Yeah,
said.
what my
Huh?
wife calls me is what my wife calls me. It's fun.
Yes. Probably well earned, right?
I try.
Occasionally. Good stuff, man. Well, Tommy, we want to talk about kind of the consumer today. So we've talked about these trends that are going on and, are we going to have a renaissance? Are we going to get our grunge era? What's going to happen with beer? A lot of consumers now, I saw a picture the other day. It said, I was driving down the interstate and saw this. It said something like, when you borrow your mom's station wagon to make a beer run, and it looked over and the whole back seat was stocked with the 450 North slushy beers.
You don't say.
Those are hot now. We had a brewery here locally that did a beer with Tricks and Skittles, and they got picked up by like Fortune magazine and Fox News and all this. It was big stuff. It was big. So what about today's consumer, man? Do they need more education? How do you educate them, or you just let people do their drinking?
Well, first and foremost, I don't want to be in the exploding can business. So let's
okay. Good move.
Beer's so hot it explodes. It's interesting because I've had a lot of conversations with friends, and I always ask the question, how educated is the consumer today? And have we devolved from a point where maybe when we were at 7-8% of total industry, consumption, maybe we had an A-B+ level of education at the consumer. But we've always stood up and said that educating the consumer is going to earn us more consumers. And I don't know that that's actually happening now. And I don't know that that's the future path that we're on.
Do the consumers even want to be educated right now? That's a question I have.
That's the tree falling in the forest question, right?
Right.
I mean, it's super fundamental.
Yeah, that was something that I noticed. I had a cousin come in from Michigan. She knew I was very into beer, and she's like, "I want to go to a place you'd go." And we ended up we went to Brickstore Pub and went to the Porter Beer Bar, our two, premium beer bars here. And we ordered something from the cellar menu, a dusty bottle, like you said, Tom.
Absolutely.
We got a dusty bottle from the cellar, and they bring it out and they get the lambic basket and the whole presentation and all this.
So nice.
And I turned to my cousin and her friend, and I'm telling them about this beer. And about a minute into it, I see this glazed over 1,000-yard stare. And I'm like, they don't care. They just simply don't care. And I thought, it's okay that they don't. If you enjoy this, then enjoy it. If you don't, if you don't enjoy it, don't enjoy it. If you want to know the story, you want to learn more, because there's people that all start telling the story of this beer or educating, and they're interested, and others couldn't care less.
It's crazy to me because when you think about it, we have more information at our fingertips than we've ever had, right? We have a personal computer, and anything you want to know about a single beer is easily found when you're sitting there. But think about the Belgian brewers and things like Saison de Pont and Rodenbach and lots of other like high-powered, historically relevant breweries. And everything that they do is based upon the family, the tradition, the process, the wars they survived. And it is a long story. And it's all about, that's what makes them different. And nobody cares today. Nobody cares enough to sit back and to be imbued with that interesting information. They frankly just don't care.
I kind of think, and it might be hard right now with so many good beverages out there, when you have that wow moment with a particular beer, that's what makes you kind of care about the story and what's going on. And I think all of us here have had a wow moment with beer. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's a fantastic beverage. I had no idea beer could be so good. I want to know everything there is to know. And if you don't have that moment, I don't know if you actually will ever care about where beer comes from or what it means.
No, I mean, it's crazy because when you start out as a consumer historically, you are a self-discovering person. You're like, I have to learn more in order to participate in the community. And now it's not about that anymore. It's just about, did you buy it when it was available? And if you didn't, you were an idiot.
Is it fresh? How much fruit is in that?
That's right.
It says 6%, but it's actually 1.2%.
Hang on, it was better with lactose.
Yes, it needs more lactose.
Wait, I'm supposed to lie to you? Because that seems weird.
That's it. No, that's the rules these days, Tommy.
That's right.
Catch up, Tommy. Catch up.
I mean, that's apparently what's wrong with our business model.
I've kind of been the type that, just drink what you like, and I make fun of things, I know the brewer, of course, that did the Tricks and Skittles beer, and I gave him grief for it, but I still drank the beer. I still checked it out and did that. So I'm so hypocritical, Brian.
I have to say, I actually like the beer. I drank it, and
yes.
I actually liked the beer.
It was
yes.
not what you would have expected.
No,
from a Trix and Skittles beer.
It was not.
So, it was a little sour, a little fruity, but it was not like, candy cereal beer, which surprised me.
Is that Tommy hanging up on us? I think
he's out of here. He's done, man. No more. Click, click. So, Tommy, what's new for you? We talked about the Pilsner coming in cans from Lost Abbey. What else is cooking over there?
We're trying to figure out with the new realities in life and things. I mean, we're canning more beer than we've ever canned. We launched the brewed ale back in the spring when things weren't perfect. So we're trying to really build up a lot of the energy behind the Tiny Bubbles brand. And then, I kind of mentioned off air that we've got a gluten-free brand that's, in the tasting room currently that we're kind of dinking around with. But we're not going to sit back and think that the world is the same and that we can make the same things we've always done. So a lot of special projects and small batch things, which are fun for me because I get to, sort of interject. My day is not about going out and trying to perfect the IPAs that we're working on. We have a team for that. So I'm more inclined to, look smaller these days and look more inward.
So I'm curious. So what is a day in the life of Tomme Arthur like at the brewery? I mean, what are you focusing on?
I mean, I get out of bed every day and I come to work knowing that I really don't know what my day is going to look like.
Okay.
It's crazy. It's so varied. I'm focused on supporting the beer going out the door currently. So sometimes I'm on the canning line helping out. Sometimes I'm moving kegs. Right now it's about getting into work and getting out of everyone's way.
As a business owner, that's what you do. You just make sure that to keep everything moving, right?
I mean, I gave them a job and I hope they do it well.
That's the goal.
You should have the best people for the job and just let them do
That's it, man. You got to put a good team together. That's actually really important. Know your strengths and weaknesses and make sure you hire people who have strengths where you don't.
Nobody ever succeeded micromanaging.
No, absolutely not.
Very true.
That's true. Tommy, a quick question here that I was curious about. You have several different brands here. Why do you run under different brands there?
I think for us, it gets back to some of the storytelling, the positioning. We make 100 different beers a year, or 55 or whatever, but they all can't filter under one spot. So we've always felt that giving them their own attention was important.
I do want to say that I would buy the rap album of the little guy on the Orange Guava Brewed Ale.
Yeah, so his name is Brutus T. Bubbles.
Okay, I'm down, man. I'm ready to buy it. Absolutely.
He probably already has a collaboration track out there.
He's probably got something going, man. Tiny Bubbles. That's ready.
Right.
Him and Don Ho.
And
Don Ho making some albums there.
Yeah.
So Tommy, thanks so much for being with us. If people want to keep up with what is happening with all of your adventures, where should they go?
I think our principal of things these days, our means is through Instagram. So typically Lost Abbey on Instagram is where most of it starts, and then we kind of filter the sub brands through there. We have about 100,000 followers on Instagram, so we know that that's a medium that is important. And then, Drink Tiny is the Tiny Bubbles, and Hop Concept. Everything has its own sub Instagram page, but we cross promote pretty well.
Good stuff. Tommy, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
It's been a blast, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. That about wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. Join us next week as we talk with one of America's oldest breweries. And Brian, they are at home in the town of our newest radio affiliate, that is Minnesota's August Shell Brewing Company. For more craft beer info, follow us online. We are Beer Guys Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week, and don't forget to drink local. Cheers.